But here's what she doesn't know. He's been watching her for months, falling in love with her quiet kindness and closing the cafe. That's not revenge. That's the beginning of the most beautiful transformation both of their lives have ever seen. This is the story of Emily Carter, who thought returning a $2 piece of jewelry was just doing the right thing. She had no idea it would expose a secret so shocking it could destroy the fragile trust between them, or prove that when someone truly sees your worth, they'll move mountains to help your dreams come true. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest miracles. Sometimes quiet kindness is exactly loud enough to change everything. The morning rain drummed against the windows of Maple and Main, a cozy cafe tucked between two towering office buildings in downtown Boston. Inside, the familiar symphony of grinding coffee beans and gentle chatter created a cocoon of warmth against the grey October day. Emily Carter moved through her morning routine with practiced grace, her movements deliberate and unhurried. At 28, she had perfected the art of being present, yet invisible. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the same understated uniform every day, a cream-colored apron over a soft grey sweater that seemed to mirror her desire to blend into the background. But if you watched, closely really watched, you'd notice something remarkable about Emily. She remembered every regular customer's order by heart. She knew that Mrs. Patterson preferred her latte extra hot because her arthritis made her hands cold. She understood that the college student who came in at 7:15 was always running late, so she had his double espresso ready before he reached the counter. Have you ever noticed how some people carry stories in their silence? Christopher was one of those people. Christopher Langston was one of her favorite mysteries. Tall and lean, with prematurely silver hair and intelligent grey eyes, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had learned that true power didn't need to announce itself. For the past 6 months, he had arrived every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at exactly 8:30. He always ordered the same thing: a single shot of espresso and a blueberry scone. At the counter, Chloe Martinez was working her charm on a well-dressed businessman. At 22, Chloe was everything Emily felt she wasn't: confident, beautiful, and unafraid to command attention. Her honey blonde hair caught the light perfectly, and she had a way of leaning toward customers that made them feel like they were the most important person in the world. In the corner, Harold Pemberton sat with his usual newspaper and black coffee. At 68, Mr. Harold was a fixture at Maple and Main. His clothes were always clean but worn, his grey beard neatly trimmed, and his blue eyes sharp with the wisdom of someone who had seen both triumph and failure. Sometimes wisdom comes from the most unexpected places, doesn't it? But this peaceful morning routine is about to be shattered by a moment so small, so seemingly insignificant, that Emily will almost miss it entirely. In just a few minutes, a simple piece of jewelry will fall to the floor, and with it, Emily's quiet world will begin to transform in ways she never could have imagined. What she doesn't know is that the man sitting in the corner, the one she's been secretly curious about for months, is about to leave behind something precious. And her decision about what to do with it will change both their lives forever. That particular Monday morning started like any other. Christopher arrived at exactly 8:30, ordered his usual espresso and blueberry scone, and settled into his corner table with his leather-bound notebook. But today, something seemed different. There was a tension in his shoulders, a distant look in his eyes that suggested his mind was wrestling with something significant. Emily prepared his order with her usual care, adding a tiny white flower from the arrangement behind. The counter, a small touch she only did for customers who seemed to need a little extra kindness. When she handed him the tray, their eyes met for a moment, and Emily felt that familiar flutter of connection. The morning continued its gentle rhythm until around 10:30, when Christopher finished his writing, closed his notebook, and prepared to leave. He followed his same routine, gathering his things methodically, checking his phone once, and nodding goodbye to Emily. But today, as he stood to leave, something silver caught the light near his chair. Emily saw it from across the cafe, a delicate bracelet that must have fallen from his wrist or pocket. By the time Emily realized what had happened and moved from behind the counter, Christopher was already gone, swallowed into the busy Boston streets. Emily picked up the bracelet, surprised by its weight. It wasn't flashy or expensive looking, but there was something about it that spoke of deep significance. The silver was worn smooth in places, as if from years of being handled with care. Engraved on the inside was a simple inscription, "Forever." In my heart, M. Have you ever held something that clearly meant the world to someone else? It changes how you see that person, doesn't it? What's that? Chloe appeared beside her, curiosity evident in her voice. Mr. Langston dropped this, Emily said, showing her the bracelet. Chloe examined it with the practiced eye of someone who could assess value quickly. Doesn't look like much. Probably just costume jewelry. You should put it in the lost and found box. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this bracelet held more value than its appearance suggested. The way it had been worn, the careful engraving, the quality of the silver. Everything about it whispered of deep personal significance. Sometimes the people closest to us can't see what we see. Have you ever felt that way? Emily stands at a crossroads she doesn't even realize exists yet. In her hands she holds more than just a piece of jewelry. She holds the key to a mystery that will unravel everything she thinks she knows about the quiet man who visits her cafe 3 times a week. Should she take the safe route and put it in the lost and found box like Chloe suggests? Or should she trust her instincts and do something that terrifies her? Something that will require her to step out of the shadows she's been hiding in for so long? Her next decision will determine whether this story ends here or whether it's just beginning. After the lunch rush, Emily made a decision that would have seemed impossible for her just months earlier. She asked Chloe to cover for her during the afternoon lull and set out to find Christopher Langston. She had never done anything like this before. The Emily of 6 months ago would have put the bracelet in the lost and found box and hoped for the best. The walk from Maple and Main to the financial district took 20 minutes, giving Emily plenty of time to second-guess her decision. With each step, her confidence wavered. What if Christopher thought she was overstepping? What if he barely remembered her? But then she thought about the inscription, "Forever in my heart, M," and her resolve strengthened. Someone had given this bracelet with love, and that love deserved respect. When was the last time you did something that scared you but felt absolutely right? Finding Christopher proved easier than expected. A quick internet search revealed that Christopher Langston was the CEO of Langston Technologies, a company specializing in sustainable energy solutions. Their offices occupied 3 floors of a gleaming glass tower just 6 blocks from the cafe. Standing in the marble lobby, Emily felt overwhelmed by the contrast between this world and her own. Everything was sharp angles and polished surfaces, designed to impress and intimidate. The security guard looked up at her with barely concealed skepticism. "I'm here to see Mr. Langston," Emily said, her voice smaller than she intended. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I have something that belongs to him." Emily held up the bracelet. After what felt like an eternity, the guard hung up his phone and looked at Emily with surprise. "He'll see you. 32nd floor. Have you ever walked into a space where you felt like you didn't belong? It takes courage to stay." Christopher looked up from his desk as Emily entered, genuine surprise crossing his features. His office was spacious but not ostentatious, with the same leather-bound notebook she recognized from the cafe scattered across his desk. "Emily," he said, standing immediately. "This is unexpected. Is everything all right?" "I found this," Emily said simply, extending her hand to show him the bracelet. "You left it at the cafe." For a moment, Christopher just stared at the bracelet. Then Emily saw something shift in his expression. Surprise, relief, and something deeper that looked almost like pain. "I didn't even realize I'd lost it," he said quietly. "I've worn this every day for 3 years. My mother gave this to me just before she passed away. Have you ever seen someone receive something they thought was lost forever? It's like watching a small miracle. Emily has just done something extraordinary without even realizing it. She's returned more than a bracelet. She's returned a piece of someone's heart, a connection to a love that death couldn't break." But as she stands in Christopher's office, watching the gratitude and something deeper flicker across his face. She has no idea that this moment of simple kindness has just set in motion a chain of events that will turn her quiet world upside down. Christopher is looking at her now with new eyes, seeing something in this shy barista that most people overlook. And Emily? She's about to discover that sometimes when you give someone back what they've lost, they want to give you something. In return, something that could change your life forever. Emily walked back to Maple and Main with a strange lightness in her chest. She had done something that scared her, something outside her comfort zone, and the world hadn't ended. In fact, it had responded with gratitude and grace. The next few days passed with Emily finding herself thinking about the brief conversation in Christopher's office. There had been moments when he seemed to be saying more than his words conveyed. Wednesday morning brought Christopher back to the cafe for his regular visit. Emily saw him coming through the window and felt her heart rate spike. Would he mention the bracelet? Would things be awkward between them now? But when he approached the counter, Christopher's manner was exactly the same as always, polite, gentle, with that slight smile that made Emily feel like they shared a quiet understanding. "Good morning, Emily," he said warmly. As Emily prepared his espresso and selected his blueberry scone, she was acutely aware of his presence in a way she hadn't been before. When she handed him his order, their fingers brushed briefly, and Emily felt a small spark of connection. Have you ever felt like every interaction with someone carried layers of meaning you were just beginning to understand? Friday morning arrived, with Christopher returning again, but this time something was different. After his usual quiet writing time, instead of simply nodding goodbye as he left, Christopher paused at the counter. "Emily," he said quietly, "I wanted to thank you again for returning my bracelet. It meant more than I could express the other day." "I'm glad I could help," Emily replied softly. Christopher hesitated for a moment, as if gathering courage. "I was wondering, would you consider having dinner with me? Nothing elaborate, just two people getting to know each other better." Emily felt her heart skip. She looked at this man who had been a pleasant mystery for months, who had just revealed something precious about himself through a lost piece of jewelry. "I'd like that," she heard herself say. Christopher's relief was visible. "Saturday evening? 7 o'clock? "Yes," Emily said, surprising herself with her certainty. When someone sees something worth pursuing in you, how do you find the courage to believe them? Sometimes the best relationships start with small acts of kindness that show someone your character. What small kindness could you offer someone today? Saturday evening found Emily standing in front of her bathroom mirror, making final adjustments to her appearance. She had chosen a simple blue dress that made her feel both comfortable and pretty. Looking at herself, Emily saw someone she almost didn't recognize, still herself, but somehow more so. Christopher arrived at exactly 7 o'clock, looking handsome in a charcoal grey suit. "You look beautiful," he said softly, and Emily could tell he meant it. The restaurant, Nonna's Table. In the North End was intimate without being intimidating. Their corner table offered privacy, while still allowing them to observe the gentle bustle around them. "I have to admit," Christopher said as they settled into their seats, "I was nervous about tonight." Emily looked at him with surprise. "You were nervous?" "Terrified," Christopher said with a self-deprecating smile. "It's been a long time since I've done anything like this. Adding something new, something that matters, is both exciting and scary. Isn't it wonderful when someone admits to feeling the same fears you do?" Their conversation flowed more easily than Emily had dared hope. They talked about books, travel dreams, and gradually more personal things. When Christopher asked about her family, Emily found herself sharing the story of her broken engagement 2 years earlier. "I was engaged to Marcus," she said quietly. "We had plans to move back to Vermont, start a family, live the life everyone expected us to live, but it turned out Marcus had been cheating on me for months, with my best friend, actually." "I'm sorry," Christopher said, genuine sympathy in his voice. "The worst part wasn't even the betrayal," Emily continued. "It was realizing that I had been so focused on being what other people wanted me to be, that I had lost track of what I actually wanted. And now, have you figured out what you want? Emily looked across the table at this man who had created a space for her to be honest about her fears and hopes. I want to matter, she said finally. I want my life to have meaning. You already do that, Christopher said. Every day. When someone believes in you, does it make you believe in yourself? The evening ended with a gentle kiss on Emily's doorstep and plans to see each other again soon. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was moving toward something good instead of simply surviving each day. Emily floats home on a cloud of possibility, her heart full and her mind racing with the memory of Christopher's lips on hers and his promise to see her again soon. She has no idea that even as she's falling asleep with a smile on her face, storm clouds are gathering around the one place that has been her sanctuary for so long. By Monday morning, her world will be turned upside down by news that threatens to destroy everything she's built, and the man she's just started to trust will be forced to reveal secrets that could shatter the fragile connection they've just begun to explore. Sometimes, just when life starts to feel perfect, that's when the real test begins. The following Monday morning, Emily arrived at Maple and Main with a lightness in her step that hadn't been there in months. She found herself humming softly as she worked, drawing curious glances from Chloe. Around 10 o'clock, Emily noticed unusual activity outside the cafe. People in business suits were walking back and forth past the windows, talking on phones and carrying clipboards. Mr. Harold arrived, looking concerned. "Emily, dear," he said quietly, "I think you should know that there are some people outside, asking questions about the cafe, about lease agreements, property values. I think someone might be interested in buying the building." Emily felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. Maple and Main rented their space from an elderly man who had owned the building for decades. If he decided to sell, there was no guarantee that new owners would want to keep a small cafe as a tenant. How quickly can your whole world shift when you realize how little control you actually have? Around noon, her worst fears were confirmed when Mr. Hendricks, the building's owner, shuffled through the door with an expression of reluctant determination. "Emily," he said heavily, "I need to talk to you." The news was devastating. A development. Company had made an offer he couldn't refuse. The sale would be final at the end of the month, and the new owners planned to renovate the entire first floor for a chain restaurant. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," Mr. Hendricks said. "I know this place means a lot to you." Emily nodded, understanding his position, even as her heart broke. In 3 weeks, Maple and Main would close forever. The cafe that had been her refuge, the job that had helped her rebuild her confidence, all of it would be gone. Wednesday morning brought Christopher back to the cafe, and Emily had been both looking forward to and dreading seeing him. She wanted the comfort of his presence, but she didn't want to burden him with her problems so early in their relationship. But Christopher took one look at her face and immediately knew something was wrong. "What's happened?" he asked, his voice full of concern. "Have you ever known that someone was about to say something that would change everything? Emily is about to share her devastating news with the one person who might understand her pain. But what she doesn't know is that Christopher already knows about the building sale, because he's the one behind it. As she prepares to tell him that her world is crumbling, he's wrestling with a secret so massive it could destroy the trust they've just begun to build." In the next few minutes, everything Emily thought she knew about Christopher, about their relationship, about her own future, is about to be turned completely upside down. The quiet man she's falling in love with is about to reveal that he's not just a customer who appreciates good coffee, he's the billionaire who holds her entire future in his hands. As Emily told Christopher about the building sale and the cafe's impending closure, she watched his expression change from concern to something deeper, a kind of focused intensity she had never seen before. "When is the sale final?" he asked. "End of the month," Emily said. "The new owners want to gut the space and put in a chain restaurant." Christopher was quiet for a long moment, and Emily could almost see him thinking, processing information in ways she couldn't follow. "Emily," he said finally, There's something I need to tell you. Emily felt her stomach clench. I haven't been completely honest with you about why I come here, Christopher continued. Yes, I love the coffee and the atmosphere, but the main reason I've been coming to Maple and Main for months is because I've been considering investing in small businesses in this neighborhood. Emily stared at him, not understanding. I own the development company that made the offer on this building, Christopher said quietly. The words hit Emily like a physical blow. What? I bought the building because I believe this neighborhood needs more places like Maple and Main, not fewer. But I needed to understand what made this place special before I made any changes. Have you ever had a moment where everything you thought you knew suddenly shifted into a completely different picture? You've been watching me, Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. This whole time you've been... What, doing research? No, Christopher said urgently. Emily, it didn't start that way. I came here initially because I was considering the investment, yes. But I kept coming back because I was falling in love with you. Emily felt like she couldn't breathe. The man she had been falling for had been studying her and her workplace like a business proposition. I need some air, Emily said, pulling off her apron with shaking hands. Emily, please. But Emily was already walking toward the door, past curious customers, past Chloe's concerned face, past Mr. Harold's understanding nod. When someone's truth is so different from what you believed, how do you know which version of them is real? Emily's world has just imploded. The man she thought she was falling in love with has been living a lie. Or has he? As she walks away from the cafe, her mind reeling with betrayal and confusion, she doesn't know that Christopher is standing there with his heart breaking, watching the best thing that's ever happened to him slip away because he was too afraid to be honest. Emily is about to spend the most difficult night of her life, wrestling with questions that have no easy answers. Can you love someone you don't fully trust? Can someone be genuine even when they've kept massive secrets? And most importantly, is Christopher the manipulative billionaire she now thinks he is? Or is he the kind, quiet man who's been sitting in her cafe for months, falling in love with her authentic heart? The answer will determine whether this story ends in heartbreak, or whether it's about to become something even more beautiful than she ever imagined. Emily spent the rest of Wednesday in her apartment, alternating between anger and confusion. By Thursday morning, she knew she couldn't hide forever. When she arrived at work, she found Christopher waiting outside, looking like he hadn't slept. Please, he said simply when he saw her. 5 minutes. Emily looked at him and saw the same man who had been quietly kind to her for months, but also a stranger, whose life was far more complex than she had understood. 5 minutes, Emily agreed. They walked to a small park nearby, sitting on a bench, facing each other. Christopher looked exhausted, but his eyes were clear and focused. I need you to understand the timeline, he said. I started coming to the cafe 6 months ago because my company was considering this neighborhood for investment. That part is true. But within 2 weeks, the business analysis became secondary to something else entirely. Have you ever wanted something so much that you were afraid to reach for it? You, Christopher continued, the way you moved through your work with such care and attention. I found myself coming back not to evaluate the business, but just to be in the same space as you. But you never said anything, Emily pointed out. For months, you just observed. Because I was terrified. Emily, do you have any idea how rare it is to meet someone who is exactly who they appear to be? Most people in my world want something from me, but you treated me like I was just another customer. Christopher ran his hands through his hair. When did you decide to buy the building? 2 months ago, Christopher admitted. When I heard rumors that other developers were interested, I realized I couldn't bear the thought of this place being destroyed. Can someone's actions be both manipulative and loving? Can intentions be pure, even when circumstances are complicated? What happens now? Emily asked. You own my workplace. How is that not a power imbalance? You're right, Christopher said. It is a power imbalance, and I hate that. But Emily, your job is safe, regardless of what happens between us personally. If you decide that what I did was unforgivable, the cafe will still be there. Emily searched his face for signs of deception. Instead, She saw the same man who had shared his vulnerabilities over dinner, who had made her feel seen and valued. "I need time," Emily said finally. "This is too big for me to process right now." When someone asks for forgiveness, how do you decide whether to give it? Emily stands at the most crucial crossroads of her life. In her hands, she holds a choice that will define not just her future, but the kind of person she wants to be. Christopher has laid his heart bare, shown her his wounds, and asked for something precious: her trust. But trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. As Emily walks away from this conversation, she carries with her the weight of a decision that could lead to the greatest love of her life, or the greatest mistake. She has people who care about her, people whose wisdom might help her see clearly. But ultimately, this choice is hers alone. Will she choose safety and solitude, or will she choose the terrifying, beautiful risk of loving someone whose life is far more complicated than she ever imagined? The next few days will test everything. Emily believes about love, forgiveness, and the courage required to build a life with another person. The next few days at Maple and Main felt surreal. Emily went through the motions of her job, but her mind was constantly elsewhere. Christopher's absence was obvious. His corner table sat empty, creating a void that affected the entire atmosphere. Harold was the first to address what everyone was wondering about. "Trouble in paradise?" he asked gently during Thursday afternoon. Emily found herself telling Mr. Harold the entire story. As she spoke, she watched his expression carefully, looking for judgment or advice. Instead, she saw understanding. "Ah," Mr. Harold said when she finished, "the classic dilemma of the human heart." "What do you mean?" "People are complicated, dear. We all have multiple reasons for the things we do. The question isn't whether Christopher had complex motives. Of course he did. The question is whether his feelings for you are genuine, despite those complications. Have you ever loved someone whose life was more complicated than you expected? But how can I trust him?" Emily asked. "He kept such a huge secret. Did he lie? Or did he simply not tell you everything?" Mr. Harold asked gently. "There's a difference." Emily considered this. Christopher had never actually told her he was poor or struggling. He had simply omitted information. "And his behavior toward you," Mr. Harold continued, "has that been consistent? Has he treated you with respect and kindness?" Emily nodded reluctantly. "Then perhaps the question isn't whether you can trust him to be perfect," Mr. Harold said. "Perhaps the question is whether you can trust him to be human. What if trust isn't about expecting someone to be flawless, but about believing they care enough to try to do better?" Friday brought an unexpected visitor. A woman in her 50s, elegantly dressed but with kind eyes, approached the counter. "Are you Emily?" she asked. "Yes," Emily replied cautiously. "I'm Margaret Langston, Christopher's stepmother. Could we talk?" During her break, Emily sat with Margaret, wondering what she could possibly want to discuss. "I want you to know that Christopher didn't ask me to come here," Margaret began. "But I've never seen my stepson as happy as he's been these past few weeks. I think you deserve to know some things about him." Margaret told Emily about Christopher's childhood, how his mother's death when he was 12 had devastated him, how his father's quick remarriage had made him feel replaced. She explained how Christopher had learned that people often wanted things from him, rather than wanting him. "He was terrified that you would change too," Margaret continued, "that you would start seeing him as Christopher Langston the billionaire, instead of just Christopher the man who likes his coffee at 8:30. Sometimes understanding someone requires hearing their story from people who love them. After Margaret left, Emily found herself seeing Christopher's behavior in a different light, the months of patient presence before he attempted to get to know her personally, the genuine nervousness before their dinner. What if his secrecy hadn't been about deceiving her, but about creating a space where he could be authentic? Sometimes the stories behind people's choices help us understand their hearts, even when we can't excuse their actions. Emily's heart is softening, but her mind is still guarded. She's hearing Christopher's story, not just from him, but from the people who love him, and slowly a different picture is emerging. Not of a manipulative billionaire playing games with her heart, but of a wounded man who learned too young to protect himself from pain. The wisdom of her community is surrounding her, offering perspective she couldn't find alone, Mr. Harold's gentle guidance about trusting wisely rather than not trusting at all. Margaret's insight into Christopher's fears. Even Chloe's direct question that cuts through all the complexity to the heart of the matter. Emily is about to make a decision that will require more courage than returning a lost bracelet ever did. She's about to choose love over fear, possibility over safety. But first, she needs to take a walk by the harbor and have an honest conversation with her own heart. That weekend, Emily walked through Boston Common, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions. She thought about everything that had happened since that Monday morning when she found Christopher's bracelet. Maybe complexity wasn't the same thing as wrongness. Maybe real relationships were always complicated because real people were complicated. Emily could choose to hold on to her hurt and anger. It would be the safer choice. But as she considered this path, it felt empty. It felt like choosing fear over possibility. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about excusing someone's choices. It's about choosing love over fear. Emily pulled out her phone and typed a simple message. "Can we talk?" His response came within minutes. Of course, when and where. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the harbor near Faneuil Hall. The next day, Emily found Christopher already waiting by the harbor railing. He turned. When he heard her approach, relief and apprehension warring across his features. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," he said. "I needed to hear your side of the story," Emily replied. "Really hear it." They stood side by side, close enough that Emily could feel Christopher's presence like warmth. "I want to tell you about my mother," Christopher said quietly. He told her about watching how differently hospital staff treated people based on their appearance, about his mother being invisible to most people, despite being the most genuine person he'd ever known. "When I started coming to the cafe and watching you work, I saw someone who reminded me of my mother," Christopher continued. "You treated everyone with equal care, regardless of whether they seemed important. You were exactly the kind of person the world needs more of. Have you ever wanted to be loved for who you are when no one is watching, rather than for what you represent to the world?" Christopher reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. "This is a contract I had my lawyers draw up 2 weeks ago, before our dinner. It establishes the cafe as a protected space with a guaranteed lease for 20 years, and names you as the manager with full operational control." Emily stared at the document. "What does this mean?" "It means that even if you decide you never want to see me again, your job is protected. My feelings for you and my commitment to preserving this place are separate things. When someone protects your dreams without being asked, what does that tell you about their character?" Emily felt tears prick at her eyes. "You did this before. You knew if I would forgive you." "I did it because it was the right thing to do," Christopher said simply. Emily was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. She thought about the months of quiet consistency he had shown, the genuine vulnerability he had shared with her. "I understand why you kept your identity secret," she said finally. "I don't like it, but I understand it." "Does that mean—" "It means I want to try," Emily said. "But Christopher, if we're going to do this, there can't be any more secrets. Is there anything more precious than someone who chooses to trust you with their whole heart?" "No more secrets." Christopher nodded. Solemnly, "I promise." Emily looked at this man who had seen something valuable in her quiet life, who had protected her dreams before she even knew they needed protecting. "There's something else," Emily said. "This scares me. I haven't let myself care about someone like this since Marcus." "I know," Christopher said gently. "I'm scared too. But Emily, I think the best things in life require us to be brave." Emily looked out at the harbor, then back at Christopher. "Okay," she said quietly, "let's be brave together. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the most beautiful destinations." Emily has chosen love. She's chosen trust. She's chosen the terrifying, beautiful path of building something real with someone whose heart matches hers, even though his life is far more complex than she ever expected. But her leap of faith is about to be rewarded in ways she never could have imagined. Christopher didn't just buy the building to preserve her job, he bought it to preserve her dreams. He's about to show her that when someone truly sees your worth, they don't just want to be with you, they want to help you become everything you're meant to be. Emily thinks she's choosing to love a billionaire, but she's actually choosing to become the woman she was always meant to be, confident, purposeful, and finally ready to step into the light. The transformation is about to begin. Monday morning found Emily approaching Maple and Main with anticipation. She and Christopher had spent Sunday afternoon talking about everything: his business, her dreams, their hopes for what they might build together. When Emily entered the IE cafe, she was surprised to see architectural plans spread across one of the tables, and a woman in a hard hat measuring the wall that separated the cafe from the empty retail space next door. Chloe was practically vibrating with excitement. "Emily, did you know about this, the expansion? They're going to double the size of the cafe, and there's going to be a bookstore section, and reading nooks and a space for community events." Emily stared at the plans, recognizing her own dream reflected in the careful drawings. During their conversation the day before, she had told Christopher about her secret wish to combine books and coffee. When someone takes your dreams seriously enough to help make them real, how do you even begin to process that kind of generosity? Mr. Harold entered, surveying the activity with barely contained delight. "It seems our little cafe is about to become something quite extraordinary." "Did you know about this?" Emily asked him. Mr. Harold's eyes twinkled. "I may have had a conversation or two with a certain young man about the importance of preserving community spaces while allowing them to grow." Around 10 o'clock, Christopher arrived. Emily felt her pulse quicken when she saw him, realizing that working through their first major challenge had deepened her connection to him. "Good morning," he said, and the greeting felt loaded with meaning. "The usual?" Emily asked, although she was already reaching for the espresso beans. "Actually," Christopher said, "I was hoping you might have time to walk through the expansion plans with me. I want to make sure we're getting everything right. When someone includes you in shaping your own future, it feels like the most natural form of respect." They spent the next hour going over the drawings, discussing everything from bookshelf placement to lighting. Emily was amazed by how much thought Christopher had put into preserving the cafe's atmosphere while expanding its possibilities. "I want this to feel like a natural evolution," Christopher explained, "not like we've replaced what was here with something entirely different." "It's perfect," Emily said, and meant it. As they talked, other customers watched them with curiosity and approval. Word had spread about the expansion plans, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. Mrs. Patterson approached their table. "Excuse me, dear," she said to Emily, "but I wanted you to know how delighted I am about the changes. A bookstore cafe is exactly what this community needs. Sometimes the most successful businesses are the ones that prioritize serving hearts as well as customers." Emily's dreams are becoming reality faster than she ever dared hope. The shy barista who was afraid to want anything significant is now the manager of an expanding business that reflects her deepest values. But this transformation is about more than just professional success. It's about Emily finally understanding her own worth. Christopher isn't just investing in a business, he's investing in her potential. He's creating a space where her gifts can flourish, where her natural ability to create community and connection can serve something bigger than herself. As Emily watches her vision take shape in architectural plans and construction schedules, she's also watching herself transform from someone who hides in the background to someone who leads with confidence and grace. But the most beautiful transformation is still to come. Because a man who truly sees your worth doesn't just want to help you succeed in business, he wants to build a life with you. 6 months after the grand reopening, the bookstore cafe had become everything Emily had dreamed it could be and more. The reading series drew authors and audiences from across Boston, and Emily had discovered she had a talent for creating intimate environments where meaningful conversations flourished. On this particular Wednesday morning, Emily noticed that Christopher seemed unusually nervous during his regular visit. Instead of settling in with his notebook as he normally did, he lingered at the counter. "Emily," he said quietly, "would you have dinner with me tomorrow night, somewhere special?" "Of course," Emily said, though something in his tone made her curious. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," Christopher said, but his smile carried more weight than usual. "I just have something I want to talk to you about. Have you ever sensed that someone important to you was preparing to say something that would change everything?" The next evening, Christopher drove toward the harbor instead of their usual restaurant neighborhoods. Emily recognized the route. They were going to the spot where they had their crucial conversation about trust and forgiveness. They parked near the water where Christopher had apparently set up earlier. A small table was arranged with candles, flowers and takeout from their favorite restaurant. "When did you do all this?" Emily asked, amazed. "I had some help," Christopher admitted. "Mr. Harold may have provided reconnaissance on your schedule." As they ate dinner by candlelight with the harbor sparkling in the background, Emily was struck by how far they had both come. "Emily," Christopher said as they finished dessert, "do you remember what you told me about wanting your life to matter?" Emily nodded, curious about where this was leading. "You've done so much more than that," Christopher continued. "You've created a space where people feel welcomed and valued. You've made the neighborhood better just by being exactly who you are. Have you ever had someone reflect back to you the impact you've had on the world?" Christopher reached across the table and took Emily's hands. "But more than that, you've changed my life completely. You've shown me what it means to be known and loved for who I really am." Emily felt her heart begin to race as Christopher stood up and moved around the table to kneel beside her chair. "Emily Carter," he said, pulling out a small velvet box. "You are the most genuine, kind and strong person I've ever met. You make ordinary moments feel extraordinary, and you make me want to be the best version of myself." Christopher opened the box to reveal a ring that was both elegant and understated, exactly what Emily would have chosen for herself. "Will you marry me?" Christopher asked. "Is there anything more beautiful than someone asking you to build a future together?" Emily looked at this man who had seen past her carefully constructed invisibility to the person she was meant to be. "Yes," Emily said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Christopher slipped the ring onto Emily's finger and it felt perfect, right in every way. "I love you," Christopher said, standing to kiss her properly. "I love you too," Emily replied, "more than I ever thought possible." Sometimes the most important questions have the simplest answers. The shy barista and the billionaire are engaged. The woman who once thought she didn't deserve to want anything significant is now wearing a ring that represents not just love, but recognition of her worth. The man who built walls to protect his heart has found someone worth tearing them down for. But their love story isn't just about two people finding each other. It's about what happens when that love creates ripple effects that touch an entire community. Emily and Christopher's engagement is about to become a celebration that brings together all the people who believed in them before they fully believed in themselves. The cafe that brought them together is about to host a celebration of love that will show just how far both of them have traveled from the quiet, guarded people they used to be. The next morning, Emily arrived at work wearing her engagement ring and feeling like she was floating. She had barely hung up her apron when Chloe noticed the new addition to her left hand. "Emily Carter!" Chloe shrieked. "Is that what I think?" "It is." The entire cafe erupted in celebration. Mrs. Patterson insisted on buying coffee for everyone present. Mr. Harold declared it the best news he'd heard in years, and even customers Emily barely knew offered congratulations. Have you ever experienced how joy becomes contagious when it's shared with people who genuinely care about you? Mr. Harold approached Emily during the afternoon lull, his eyes bright with happiness. He pulled out a small wrapped package. "I have something for you," he said. Emily opened it to find a first-edition copy of Jane Eyre, one of her favorite novels. "Mr. Harold, I can't accept this," Emily protested. "This must be it's worth exactly what I want it to be worth," Mr. Harold interrupted gently. "Which is the pleasure of giving it to someone who will treasure it properly." Emily felt tears prick at her eyes. "Thank you. This means so much to me." "You know," Mr. Harold said thoughtfully, "when I first started coming here, I was convinced that the best parts of my life were behind me. Watching you and Christopher find each other, seeing what you've built, it's reminded me that good things can happen at any stage of life if we stay open to them. Sometimes witnessing other people's happiness reminds us of the possibilities still available in our own lives." When Christopher arrived for his regular visit, the entire cafe sparkled with excitement. Emily watched him navigate congratulations from customers who had apparently been following their relationship with invested interest. I think we underestimated how invested everyone was in our story, Christopher said quietly. I think they were rooting for us before we were even rooting for ourselves, Emily replied. Around 4 o'clock, Christopher's stepmother, Margaret, arrived, looking elegant but emotional. I hope you don't mind, Margaret said, but Christopher called me with the news and I just had to come congratulate you in person. Emily found herself enveloped in a warm hug. I have something I'd like to give you, Margaret continued, pulling out a small jewelry box. This was Christopher's mother's. He asked me to pass it along to you. Emily opened the box to find a delicate silver bracelet, similar in style to the one she had returned to Christopher all those months ago. She would have loved you, Margaret said softly. You have the same gentle strength she had. Sometimes the most precious inheritances aren't monetary. They're the connections that link us to people we never got to meet, but who shape the people we love. Emily's engagement has become a community celebration, a testament to how much she's changed from the invisible barista who hid behind the coffee counter. People who barely knew her are celebrating her happiness because they've watched her transform into someone who brings light to their daily lives. But this celebration is more than just about Emily and Christopher. It's about what happens when authentic love creates a ripple effect that touches everyone around it. As Emily prepares for her wedding day, she's not just preparing to marry the man she loves, she's preparing to step fully into the woman she was always meant to be. The wedding will be held in the place where their love story began, surrounded by the community that nurtured it. And it will be beautiful, not because of elaborate decorations or expensive details, but because it will be a celebration of authentic love, genuine community, and the power of two people who chose to be brave enough to be known. The morning of Emily and Christopher's wedding dawned clear and bright, with that particular quality of autumn light that makes everything look touched with gold. Emily woke feeling peaceful anticipation rather than nervousness. The bookstore cafe had been transformed overnight, but Emily was amazed by how the decorations enhanced rather than overwhelmed the space's natural warmth. White flowers and greenery were woven between the bookshelves, candles created intimate pools of light, and the ceremony space was framed by the windows that looked out onto the Boston street where their story had begun. Emily's best friend, Sarah, helped her get ready in the small office that had been converted into a temporary bridal suite. Are you sure about this? Sarah asked as she helped Emily into her dress, a simple but elegant design in ivory silk. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Emily replied, and realized she meant it completely. Sometimes certainty comes not from the absence of fear, but from the presence of deep trust. Through the office window, Emily could see guests arriving. She recognized many faces from the cafe, regular customers who had become friends, neighbors who had supported the expansion, local authors who had participated in the reading series. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a community celebration. Exactly 4 o'clock, Emily took her father's arm and prepared to walk down an aisle created between the bookshelves. As she rounded the corner and saw the ceremony space, Emily's breath caught. Christopher stood at the front wearing a charcoal grey suit that made his silver hair and grey eyes particularly striking. But it was his expression that made Emily's heart skip, pure joy mixed with amazement, as if he couldn't quite believe this moment was real. Have you ever seen someone look at you like you were the answer to every question they'd ever had? The ceremony was conducted by a local minister who spoke about the specific journey that had brought them together, the quiet months at the cafe, the crisis that tested their trust, the way they had built something meaningful together. When it came time for personal vows, Christopher spoke first. Emily, he said, his voice steady but full of emotion, you taught me that the most extraordinary life is built from ordinary moments approached with extraordinary care. You showed me that genuine kindness is the rarest and most valuable quality a person can possess. I promise to spend our life together creating space for you to shine as brightly as you deserve to shine. Sometimes the most beautiful promises are the ones that see you exactly as you are and commit to helping you become even more yourself. Emily's vows were simpler, but no less heartfelt. Christopher, you saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. You believed in my dreams before I was brave enough to claim them. You made me feel worthy of love and success and happiness. I promise to spend our marriage helping you feel as known and cherished as you've made me feel." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the entire cafe erupted in applause. Emily and Christopher's first kiss as a married couple happened, surrounded by books and the scent of coffee, in the space where they had fallen in love. Have you ever felt like a moment was so perfect it seemed designed specifically for you? The reception was exactly what Emily had hoped for. Relaxed, joyful, and filled with genuine connection. Instead of a traditional wedding cake, they served pastries from local bakeries. Instead of a DJ, they had a string quartet playing while guests mingled throughout the bookstore and cafe areas. During a quiet moment, Margaret approached Emily with tears in her eyes. "I wish Christopher's mother could have been here to see this," Margaret said. "She would have been so proud and so grateful that he found someone who loves him the way you do. I think she would have approved of him marrying someone who works with books," Emily said. "She absolutely would have," Margaret agreed. "She always believed that the best love stories were the ones where ordinary people chose to be extraordinary for each other. Sometimes the people we never got to meet are still present in the moments that matter most. Emily and Christopher are married. The shy barista and the billionaire have become husband and wife in a ceremony that perfectly reflects who they are. Authentic, community-centered, and focused on what truly matters. Their wedding wasn't just a celebration of their love, it was a celebration of transformation, of two people who were brave enough to be known and to build something beautiful together. But even the most perfect wedding day is just the beginning. As Emily and Christopher start their married life, they're about to discover that the best love stories don't end with "I do." They begin there. Their future holds challenges and joys, growth and adventure, and most importantly, the daily choice to continue being brave enough to love each other authentically. The bookstore cafe where they fell in love will continue to be the heart of their story, but now it will also be the foundation for the family they're about to build. 1 year later, the morning sun streamed through the windows of what was now called Maple and Main Books and Coffee, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny celebrations in the golden light. Emily stood behind the counter, her wedding ring, catching the light as she prepared the first batch of coffee for the day. Looking back, Emily marveled at how many small choices had led to this moment of quiet contentment. The bookstore cafe had exceeded everyone's expectations. The reading series was booking authors 6 months in advance. The community book clubs were thriving, and Emily had hired 3 additional staff members. Have you ever looked back at your life and been amazed by how much can change when you're brave enough to follow your instincts? At 8:30 on this particular Wednesday morning, Christopher arrived for their sacred routine. Even though they lived together now, he still came to the cafe 3 mornings a week to have his espresso and scone at the corner table. "Some traditions are too important to break," he had explained. "This is where we fell in love. I want to keep coming here to remember how it felt to discover you." This morning, Christopher looked particularly pleased about something. "Good news?" Emily asked, beginning to prepare his usual order. "The best news," Christopher said. "The Sustainable Energy Project in Vermont got final approval. We'll be able to provide clean power to 3 rural communities that have been struggling with rising energy costs." Emily smiled, feeling proud of her husband's work. She had learned that Christopher's success was built on genuine desire to solve problems. "And help communities, that's wonderful," she said. "Your mother would be proud." "I think she would be proud of both of us," Christopher replied. "Isn't it beautiful when the work you do serves purposes larger than yourself?" Mr. Harold entered with his customary newspaper and coffee order. At 70, he had become something like a grandfather figure to both Emily and Christopher. "How are the newlyweds?" Mr. Harold asked with a twinkle in his eye. "Very happy," Emily replied, and realized how completely true that was. "Any interesting developments on the horizon?" Mr. Harold asked with the casual air of someone who always seemed to know more than he let on. Emily glanced toward Christopher, who was writing with unusual intensity. They had been talking privately about exciting possibilities for both their personal future and the cafe's continued growth. "Maybe," Emily said with a mysterious smile, "but you'll be among the first to know when there's news to share. Sometimes the most exciting chapters of our lives are the ones we're still writing." Around 10 o'clock, Emily noticed a familiar scene near the children's section. A young woman was reading to a little boy who couldn't have been more than 4. The woman looked tired but patient, and the boy was completely absorbed in the story. Emily approached them during a quiet moment. "Is there anything I can get for you? Coffee, juice for the little one?" The woman looked up with gratitude. "That's so kind of you. I'm Sarah, and this is my son, Marcus. We just moved to the neighborhood, and someone told us this was a good place to spend the morning." "Welcome to the neighborhood," Emily said warmly. "I'm Emily. I manage this place. Let me get you both something to drink on the house. New neighbors should feel welcome." As Emily prepared drinks for her new neighbors, she thought about how much her perspective had changed. 2 years ago, she would have been too shy to approach customers proactively. Now, creating connections felt as natural as breathing. How much of personal growth is simply becoming comfortable with being ourselves in the presence of others. Later that afternoon, Emily overheard 2 teenage girls browsing the young adult books. "I love coming here," one said. "It feels different from other places, like more genuine or something." "I know what you mean," her friend replied. "My mom says it's because the people who run it actually care about more than just making money. They care about creating something good." Emily felt a warm glow of satisfaction. This was exactly what she and Christopher had hoped to create, a space that felt authentic and nurturing. When your work aligns with your values, even overhearing casual conversations becomes a source of deep fulfillment. Emily has become the woman she was always meant to be, confident, purposeful, naturally connecting with people and creating the kind of community space she always dreamed of. Her transformation from shy barista to beloved community leader is complete, but her story is far from over. As she serves new neighbors and overhears customers talking about how special her cafe feels, she doesn't yet know that the most beautiful chapter of her life is about to begin. The love story that started with a returned bracelet is about to expand in the most wonderful way possible. Emily and Christopher's happiness is about to multiply, their family is about to grow, and their legacy of quiet kindness is about to continue into the next generation. 6 months later, on a crisp spring morning, Emily stood in front of the bathroom mirror in the apartment she shared with Christopher, staring at the positive pregnancy test in her hands. After months of hoping and trying, she and Christopher were going to have a baby. The news felt like the perfect next chapter in a story that had already exceeded her wildest dreams. She thought about the child growing inside her, about the loving home they would create, about the values they would pass on, about kindness, authenticity, and the courage to be vulnerable. Have you ever felt like your life had become more beautiful than you ever dared to imagine possible? When Emily told Christopher the news that evening, his reaction was everything she had hoped for. Pure joy, wonder, and immediate planning about preparing for parenthood while continuing to nurture their business and community. "Our child is going to grow up surrounded by books and the smell of coffee," Christopher said, holding Emily close. "They're going to see their parents working together to create something meaningful, treating people with respect and kindness. They're going to understand that ordinary people can build extraordinary lives through small acts of courage and love." Emily added, "What better legacy could anyone hope to leave than the example of a life lived with integrity and purpose?" Emily looked toward the future, their child's first steps between the bookshelves, family dinners where they talked about books and customers, the continuation of the community they had built. She felt overwhelmed by gratitude. The shy barista, who had been afraid to want anything significant, had become a woman who dared to dream big and work hard to make those dreams reality. The lonely businessman who had hidden behind walls of success had learned to trust his heart and build genuine connections. Together, they had proven that quiet kindness could indeed change everything, that authenticity was the rarest and most valuable quality in a world full of pretense, that love could flourish when 2 people were brave enough to be genuinely known by each other. Mr. Harold, now a beloved grandfather figure, would often tell new customers about the early days of their relationship. "I watched it all unfold," he would say with pride. 2 people who were brave enough to see the best in each other, even when that required looking past fear and complications. The cafe bookstore continued to thrive, becoming a model for other communities. Emily's story inspired other women to trust their instincts and pursue their dreams, while Christopher's transformation reminded successful people that genuine connection was worth more than any business achievement. Sometimes the most powerful changes happen not through grand gestures, but through consistent choices to show up authentically, treat others with respect, and remain open to possibilities. Years later, when Emily and Christopher would tell their story to their children, they would always emphasize the same message. Silent kindness does have value. People who live quietly without showing off, who remain steadfast in doing what's right, will ultimately be seen and recognized. You don't need to shine loudly. Sincerity is enough to change a heart. The greatest love stories aren't about perfect people finding each other. They're about real people choosing to be brave enough to be known, to trust wisely, and to build something beautiful together, despite all the complications that come with being human. Their story continues every day at Maple and Main Books and Coffee, and the community they've built, in the family they're raising, and in the example they set for everyone who believes that ordinary people can create extraordinary lives through small acts of courage and love. What small act of kindness might you perform today that could change everything? What dream have you been afraid to pursue? What authentic part of yourself have you been hiding because you're afraid of being truly seen? The shy barista and the billionaire's love story teaches us that when we have the courage to return what belongs to others, to accept invitations that scare us, and to trust our hearts even when our minds counsel caution, we open ourselves to possibilities we never could have imagined. Sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin with the simple decision to do the right thing, even when no one is watching. In a world that often rewards flashiness over substance, Emily and Christopher's story reminds us that the most meaningful connections are built on authenticity, consistency, and the courage to see and celebrate the good in others. This story reminds us that every day presents opportunities for small acts of courage that could change everything. Whether it's returning something that isn't ours, accepting an invitation that scares us, or simply choosing to see the best in someone despite complications, we all have the power to create beautiful stories with our choices. What's your next small act of courage going to be? Think about the quiet kindness you could show someone today. Remember that you don't need to shine loudly. Your sincerity is enough to change a heart.